So anyway, so we've met. This will be our third time, right? So 3 times this semester, 3 times next semester, right? And so we've talked about. Do you remember the first thing we talked about? Utilitarianism. All right. And then the last time we met, I didn't talk, but you talked about, yeah, the ethics of it, or what the ethics of it might look like, since people are just inventing it. And that's the purpose of this: is how do you approach something that doesn't exist yet if you don't have any idea of what something should look like, as creating a way to talk about it, right? Does that make sense? How do you actually know what you're going to talk about if you don't have any kind of words for it? So the last time we talked about utility, this time is much older, perhaps the most original system as far as time goes. Aristotle is obviously. Does anybody know when Aristotle is? Does anybody know where? I'll be happy with where. Well, Europe, good. That's right. Planet Earth, Europe. And I call this the virtue of success, in the sense that most of the systems we think about tend to be, whether we like it or not, be influenced strongly by some form of religion. And it tends to be some sort of Judeo-Christian, Islamic, or Confucian, or Hindu, or Buddhist religion. But Aristotle predates all that, so he's in a different frame. So if we know anything about him, most of everything we do probably originates out of his mind and a concept, even if it turns out he was wrong in some ways. So we see the dates. He's Greek. He essentially invents all the topics that you bothered to study at the school here on any given day, right? Everything from physics to zoology, ethics to poetry. He actually uses the term for the first time, ethika, although it doesn't mean what we think it means, or what we like to call it. And he has this thing called Nicomachean ethics. He calls it the Nicomachean ethics because we're not sure if it's his father-in-law or his son who is named Nicodemus. And he was so taken with his father-in-law, he thought his father-in-law was such a great guy, that he probably named it after him. But we don't know that for sure. And as I put in there, it's that searching for best versus absolute. And in some ways this will probably appeal to you, in other ways it'll seem strange. So we remember the utilitarianist thing, right? It's the greatest good for the greatest number, right? The greatest good for the greatest number. The assumption being is that you will try to avoid anything that causes you pain and move towards anything that causes you pleasure, or at least doesn't cause pain. So whatever's not pain is what you're headed for, as if you were a rat in a cage. And since I don't know your mind, I don't know what you're thinking, the idea here is I can never know your what? Your intent. Oh, see, you remember these things. Outstanding. I can never know your intent. So the only way I can measure the success of something is by the ends, the outcome, right? Although, can I use people to gain those ends in utilitarianism? Can I make use of people? Can I take advantage of them? No, right? I can never intentionally cause anyone harm, right? That's the idea. It's never to cause anyone harm. Maybe even to the extent of animals, right? And that harm thing becomes very important. And utilitarianism is still probably one of the biggest, if not the system at the present moment when people talk. The most famous ethicists tend to deal in utilitarianism. So moving to something a little more complicated. Telos, which is this idea of kind of, does anybody know what teleology is? Go ahead. Telos? That's not what telos is. Sorry. Anybody else? No? How come you have this weird thing? You're at a school for experimentation and learn. You do realize it's a school, right? You're on that, right? It's called an academy, although that's the wrong thing. Does anybody know what his school was called? No, it's a good guess. That's Plato. You guys wouldn't like Plato. What? Lyceum, right? That's why all those French places are called lyceums. And so, well, telos is really the idea of where things originate from, right? Teleology. How do we know what are things coming from? So, true wisdom or understanding comes from an examining objects of experience and not trying to look past them. Plato had identified what he called the realm of form, where all perfect things are. So, if there's a chair, there must be the perfect form of a chair, right? And if I say triangle and I tell you to close your eyes, you'll actually see And it's perfect. There's not a single deviation. If you draw a triangle, it'll never be as perfect as the triangle you saw in your mind. And he says, that's because it's in the realm of form. There is perfection. And Aristotle, who I think was sitting in the back of he actually attended Plato's Academy, was sitting in the back saying, this sucks. And I actually think he thought Plato was full of it. And he sets off on his own, so he sets a slightly different course. So there's not perfect, but there can be for humans. If you can't be perfect, you can still be what? Close. Close to perfect is that which is for humans best. That which is best, right? So there can be best. And that our goal in life, if we have a goal in life, is to try to achieve that which could be best. Because you're supposed to be a rational person, right? You're all right, I know, right? So between sleep and self-delusion and all of those stuff, we lose that concept. Self-importance, all those things wear away at our ability to be rational. But I think most of you are mostly rational, and whether or not you deny it, and yeah. So you're kind of moving to an irrational model based on a rational effort. You are? Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to make use of you here in about 10 minutes. And so if we're not fully rational, we're falling short of who we're supposed to be. Now, what does that mean? Aristotle's primary concern, he very much believes that you are an animal, but that one of the great things that differentiates humans from other animals is that we are these incredibly complicated social creatures, and that what makes us really human is the fact that we interact with other humans. He places a huge emphasis. Wait a minute, Phineas, where's Snay? Snay, where are you? He skipped because I saw him at dinner. Oh. Because usually wherever there's Vanius, there's Snay. It's the great Aristotelian friendship. Or at least I hope it's platonic. And so the fact is that we have good... Actually, wait, you know what? I just messed up one of the virtues. And you'll figure that out. You can figure that out later. Because you're supposed to be witty. But I think I just moved into being boorish. And so the idea is that he combines both. That if you don't have good intentions, you can never actually move to good outcomes. Even if I can't know them or I can't make an absolute notion of them, if you're not intending something, it's generally not going to happen. And so I have to work on that because I'm worried about developing you as a person. And so we have to work on this. And so intentions and actions, but not really measured by ends. Although he's interested in that too, because there is the possibility that you're a particularly good person, you try really hard, you do really well for a while, and then you get run over by a bus. And he actually believes in bad luck, right? And that could happen, in which case, life sucks. And that's just the way it is. Because it does happen, right? There are really good people who are doing nothing wrong, and something bad happens to them. You know, their entire family, they have to stay at IMSA and work, and their entire family goes on a Winnebago vacation to Arizona and drives off the Grand Canyon, and they all die, and their best friends on board. And so life would be less than it could have been. And he recognizes that. And she's like, well, you're a good person, you'll get over it. He's like, no. So, but we have to strive anyway. And he wants then to find this highest or greatest good, not perfect, but best. And the idea is that you would achieve arete, or excellence. And by that, he doesn't mean, we're not talking about morals in this. We're talking about you being good at what you do, and that you strive in all things eventually to come to a final thing. So you're always doing one thing to do the next thing, to do several more things. And then the idea is that you would come to one final thing. And he says, why we do what we do. So, because why did you come to IMSA? Nobody ever loves to answer that question. You must have come to IMSA for a reason. Your parents were just like, there's a school and I can get you out of my house. Pack your bags. Yeah, I'm thinking that might be the case for some of you. They kind of slow down and just push you out the door when they got here. And you're like, when am I going for Christmas? They're like, I don't know. Right? So why'd you come here? You have no idea why you came to IMSA? Oh, you did. You came to improve the human condition. Oh, boy. That's not a hopeful sign. What else? Why'd you come to IMSA? You must have come. You had a reason. You saw the brochure. I actually got an application letter the other day for me. So, but I couldn't get in here if I tried. Why'd you come here? To learn stuff. So the next question would be, well, not what to learn. Well, you came to the Math and Science Academy. You don't know what you're going to learn? Why? Why do you want to learn stuff? It's good. What? To get better at? And potentially, some of you take more science, biology. Some of you want to take more chemistry. Some of you want to take more physics. There's at least one person in the room, I'm sure, who actually wants to take more math. There's two. That's a lot. And so the fact is, you do those things because why? Maybe you enjoy physics, right? Hopefully, you enjoy physics that you can actually use, like engineering physics, as opposed to the other stuff. But so the fact is, oh, here we go. Hey, why do you always laugh at him and you always say the wrong thing? Okay. So what? Well, so you learn more because you want to do what? Probably you came here to learn a bunch of new stuff, hopefully to have different experiences, because you want to do what? After here, you want to... Why do you want to go to college? To learn more stuff, because if you get a really good college degree, you can go to a good law school, graduate school, medical school, and you want to go to a law school, medical school, graduate school, so you can get another degree so you can eventually get a good job, make a lot of money. You know what? Aristotle doesn't have a problem with that. Because you flourish. No, wait, this is not necessarily a moral system. This is a best system. And so the idea would be, Jonathan, are you bored? And so the fact then is that you do that, and then eventually, you get a good job. Also because you would like to eventually meet a nice girl, boy, whatever. That's good. And you have a spouse, and then you have a spouse, and eventually, too, you would buy a house. I'm glad you didn't say child. And then you would eventually, after buying a house, you would eventually have... Why do you do all of that? Yeah. Social construct, you're a social construct. It is in a way, right? But it almost seems that there's an imperative to that you want to do all of these things, yes? Or at least some of it. Why? And you also seek other people out. And you form what with them? Friendships with them. And these all serve purposes, right? When we get into this idea, he talks about the excellence of intellect and the excellence of character. He thinks the intellect one is by far the most important. He's most enamored of this. He's very much in what today we would call an academic in the sense. He thinks the highest mode and the highest thing. He's actually, what he writes, he's really writing for you guys. He's not writing for people outside this building. He is literally writing for what he would consider kind of the best educated, the best brought up people that he could have any interaction with in the city of Athens or whatever city he's in. He's not just writing for everybody. Did you? Okay. Well, I'm clapping for yourself again. And so the intellect is knowledge and wisdom, but character is more about virtues, but virtues that would get us through life or allow us to interact with other people successfully. So you develop yourself intellectually with the abilities that you have to be successful intellectually, but to flourish in society, and then you have characteristics, you have virtues that allow you to interact with other human beings to be successful with them. Very good. Because if everybody was working at being successful as an individual, then you would have a society that would work successfully because everybody was striving to try to be successful on their own. Because in the end, who knows what you want to be best? You do. And what motivates you? Oh, well, the pleasures. I don't even want to know. And so the fact is but you know what you like to do. Maybe you prefer eating one thing versus another. You want to be a physicist. This guy wants to be a chemist. Somebody wants to not have a job and be a poet or something. But whatever it is motivates you, you know best. Although if you were to say, well, I just want to live in my parents' basement and play on my PS4 for the rest of my life, then he would call you what you are, which is useless. And so he has no interest in that. You have to have excellence at something, and playing video games for him wouldn't count. It wouldn't count because you're not doing what? Well, you're not using the mind necessarily, but you're also not doing what? You're supposed to be interacting with whom? Other people. And then maybe you're playing against other people in other places, but you're all in this weird kind of disconnect. You look pained. What's the matter? Yeah, I would say the people who do YouTube for a living should all be kind of put in some weird camp in North Dakota for re-education. So the idea then is you've done all these things so that you can achieve, it generally gets translated as happiness, but I think that's a mistake because happiness, the word is eudaimonia, the Greek word, and we tend to translate it into euphoria, and I don't think he means you're supposed to be euphoric all the time. Because that literally means you're running around wee constantly, like you're on some weird kind of medication. And so clearly he doesn't mean that. Because at some point you'd be worn out from wee all the time. And so the idea is to flourish and achieve, to be successful. In your life, great success, the best success would probably be having good grades, maybe being on a sports team and being good at that, having good friends. All of those things would perhaps have some level of success. And it never happens it's not the idea that at the end of every day you're checking this off. He actually has, from what I've read of him, it's the idea, I think you're sitting back, when you're like 35, looking out over the veranda and you see some, olive trees and the wife and the kids are there and you're kind of eating, you're talking about business with a couple of friends who've come over, and that would be that kind of best of moments. And you could look back over things and people would then think highly of you, right? I know people always like to say, I don't care what people think about me. I don't think they're telling you the truth. Because I think we do kind of worry about what people think of us. Not that people would force you to be what you are, but you would like for people not to be like, look at you and go like, oh, him, right? No, people wouldn't do that to you. Well, people would probably say you're a nice guy, right? I don't know, is that positive or negative though? So, contentedness. So you do everything else in order to achieve that. Because you don't do contentedness to get contented. It's the end. Everything else you do in life is to achieve that. Going here, going to undergraduate, going to graduate school or medical school or whatever, getting married or finding a significant other, whatever you want to call it, having the kids, the house, the car, working hard, presenting in conferences. All those things together are you becoming better at what you do. And then that ability to be an interesting person, draws friends in, and all of that together you do to be contented, because you don't do contented to be contented, right? You do all of that to have this kind of happy place, to be something, to be successful. And he says as a rational person, you would see that as a positive outcome. As a rational person, you would see it as a positive outcome. So virtue, there's like I said, with character. And these things come through habituation, in other words, through education. And we'll come to that. He also believes there are some people who kind of naturally are inclined to be good at interacting with other people. And some people have to struggle with it. And I think you've all seen that, right? Some people are just good at interacting with other people, and then some of you have to struggle at it, or there's certain things you're just bad at with other people, and you have to. And he's saying you have to work at it. He actually will create a list, and the breakout sessions will work on this list he creates of what he thinks are these kind of best virtues, and virtuous action and virtuous character. So if you know what it means to do the right thing, it has no meaning if you're not actually doing this best thing. He also sees people existing in 4 temperaments, which I think is the most interesting. That most of you are probably somewhere between temperance and virtue. A temperate person knows what's right, but also has the urge to not to do it. But they kind of are able to, through training or force of will, do it. And they don't have to struggle too much. The virtuous person is the person I talked about. They just, whether through its training or just character, right, Arturo? Push your head up. You look like you're about to fall out of the chair. You'll squish the guy next to you. And so the virtue then is the idea that you're able to do these things automatically, like stay awake, and that you don't have to struggle at it, that it comes to you naturally. Does not anybody know anybody who seems to just be good at interacting with other people? They just kind of have a way about it? No? Nobody at IMSA is socially aware? You're all different degrees of dysfunction? Yeah? What? Wrong crowd? I don't think so. Intemperance then means you generally know what's right, but you generally don't do it. And viciousness means you not only do you not do what's right, you really don't even know. And he sees you as being vaguely above being an animal. And so he really does see that they have different characters. So the greater virtue would be in that the temperate guy being able to move into that characteristic of being virtuous without really having to struggle at it. In other words, you can be successful without having to struggle at it. Those are the virtues that he gives. Now, you're going to go over those in the breakout sessions on a much greater degree. Some of them are relatively kind of big words or big sounding words, and some of them we don't really use so much any words, like magnificence or magnanimity. He actually thinks there's kind of big notion of being generous, and there's kind of a very modest notion of being generous, and there's different times for that, and you need to know what it is. And the thing to go with the virtues, though, is the mean. And there's the idea then, that's better like that, that for the mean of something, there is that best possible outcome, not the middle. The mean is not the middle. The mean is the best possible outcome. And then there's an excess of something and a deficiency of something. And I'll give the one that's probably easiest here in a second. So courage, right? So we have that idea of courage, which is an easy example. Does everybody see anything like 300 or 300 Rise of Empire? There's that idea of so for a normal person, then courage might be if you were faced with a difficult situation, that you would stand your ground, or you would push back if you had to, that you wouldn't run away. But he says, and that makes sense, especially if you were there with people you knew, you didn't want to leave them behind. Courage would not be running away from when all your fellows were in trouble. But there's excess of courage. That may not sound like that would make sense. But if you get excited, everybody's standing together and trying to stand up to somebody, and you either go crazy or rush out away from them and leave everybody else behind to go at the enemy or at whatever the danger is, you went too far. And so you're useless there too. And then the other one is obvious, and that's rashness. The other one is obvious, right? Cowardice is that you run away, that you show a deficiency of something. So virtue is in the mean. There's knowing what the right thing is. So it might actually be if there was, for lack of a better term, courage, if we're using a military thing, if there were 300 Spartans and they were just all in the open, and they weren't defending that pass, and there were a bazillion Persians, and there was nothing to be gained except to, kind of show off that maybe we can kill a few guys and stand there and fight. That's rashness. Because what's gained by doing that? And the answer here would be nothing. So that would not be cowardice to retreat. Does that make sense? It would show that you thought about this situation, right? Because there are times when somebody says something to you, like, I always advise this to my two sons when my wife gets mad. I'm like, look, if you always stand up to her, if you always decide to be overly courageous or be rash and say something, right? You ever have that when your mother yells at you or somebody yells at you, you go, roll your eyes or say something back because it's like kind of cool to do that briefly, but then you have a rash moment, right? Because then she's even more pissed off at you. And I'm like, be thoughtful about that. So, so there's moments to be like, oh, I didn't do it. But then there's other moments, just take it, right? You have parents, right? Right? They've never yelled at you? No? Really? Well, you clearly not for you. What? You came to IMSA to get away from your parents? Did they? No, well, they didn't yell enough. And so the fact then is that nobody's ever had their parents yell at them. Your parents have never yelled at you, right? And there's best moments. There's moments not to fight back, right? Have you never had a moment where you thought you actually understood, like, this is not a great moment to mouth off or fight back? But there are moments, right? And he actually has a virtue for that too, that you shouldn't just turn the other cheek. There are moments that you should get indignant, right? If somebody's being ridiculous or abusive, you have the right to say something back. You should, and if you don't, you're essentially being a wimp. But then going crazy ballistic and screaming about it is too much. He's always asking you to look for that best place, that mean, which means, of course, you have to work at it, and then you have to be thinking about your social situation. So that idea then, right, there's a deficiency and an excess, there's an issue, It would go into looking at what it is, and you would come out with the best action, which means you have to be processing this all the time. All right. So that means to flourish, right? So here, hey, Mouthy, whatever your name is, come here. So anybody else? You wanna? Yeah? Come here, you sit here. So you sit there, sit here. I need a female. How come only males volunteer for this stuff? You want to volunteer? No. No, I know you don't. You're busy chewing on something there. No female volunteers? Come here. Hurry up, come on. Da-da-da. Yeah, I know, you're like super good, nice, so you come up, because I want to use you as my specific example. All right, that's what I need. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. 3, I need one more. Person. Oh, you want it? Who? Oh, no, I'm not pulling somebody's teeth. No? Huh? Jack? You, with the blonde hair, come here. Hurry up, come here. So sit over here. You're really his roommate? You look very similar to each other. It's strange. Here, so switch seats. The two of you switch seats. So my idea would be then, and we've been talking about this idea of mean, but also the idea of, excellence, the idea of developing kind of intellectual, but also all these virtuous characters, and the idea that at some point you will come to look back over your life, right? Whether you're looking back over something small, like maybe they're all sitting at graduation, let's be hopeful, and they're all sitting at graduation, and graduation's a reflective moment, believe it or not. It's incredibly anticlimactic as well, just so you know, right? Because graduation is just a step up out of the lower level, right? And all the really hard stuff in the greater superstructure of life is still yet to be taken on. Not to bum you out or anything, but you do realize that, right? And so, because if it's hard here, it's harder otherwise. And so the fact is, so they said they could be sitting at graduation and you're reflecting back. Anybody ever been to IMSA graduation, right? Because everybody sits on the stage, right? There's that weird kind of everybody's on display effect, right? And they're all sitting there, and if you have a B or A or B last name, right? You're in that front row. But if they're all sitting there, and so you would be sitting there thinking back, like, and ideally, you'd be able to reflect back on these 3 years positively, right? Not in some sort of unreasonable kind of denatured way, but in a way that would be rationally, right? To sit back, that you would be able to look back and think, you know, I had made, so she would perhaps be sitting here, and the people sitting next to her, and this would be important to Aristotle, this would be important to the notion of friendship and interaction, and how people, because reputation is important to him. And you probably too, even though you deny it. And so, you know, people thinking about her like, oh man, she did really well. I know her. Oh, I remember when she helped me with that science homework. They have all these kind of positive. So when she goes to get up for graduation, there's a lot of people who have a very positive image. You know, and then there's the other thing. Some people are like, I have no idea who that is. But that would be better than the other way around, because there's always going to be a couple people you don't know, right? So there's this very positive image of her, and she can look back and think, wow, you know, like I've got 3, 5, 7 really awesome friends. I've got all these other people I really know, and have that wonderful balance of, you know, I really had a good time here. I learned a lot. I feel like I did the best I could without having to not break friendships or be dishonest with people or not do things I feel good about. And so she can have this very positive feelings, but then it would be the sense that she would also, having had that positive experience, would be looking, you know, would maybe think, oh, I'll miss IMSA, but, you know, not in a weird way, but be looking very much forward to going to college and have all these positive experiences, as opposed to, let's say, the person on the other end who would then be looking back saying, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm going to college because IMSA sucks. IMSA sucks because, yeah, and then they're looking at him going, he goes, yeah, I remember when he stole my paper and he cheated on me. I should have turned him in. And then I remember when I walked by him in the lunchroom and he tripped me and I got messed up and everybody laughed at me and he thought it was funny. I hate that guy. And then he's sitting there, you know, and he's like, oh, you know, I really don't care, and I don't care this. It was awesome because he didn't catch me when I cheated or when I lied or when I did these things, and I would have never graduated otherwise, right? Yeah. And so the fact is that he would then not have eudaimonia, would not have a happy experience. And this whole thing, because the problem is once he's in the chair of graduation, he's done with everything that was in the past. It's permanent. Does that make, you understand what I'm saying? It's permanent. And so in that sense, the flourish is the flourish, but you can't go back and undo it. And so Aristotle is then admonishing us that all those things we're talking about, the virtue that's intellectual, the excellence of mind, and the excellence of being able to do something well, really well, and then the excellence of character that allows us to have really great, he almost raises it past virtue, to have friendships and to have people respect us. He's so worried about that. He's so keen on the idea that that would be important to people. That would be important especially to you for yourself, because it's your experience. But it's also society. Then if everybody's dysfunctional, then nothing makes sense or works, right? So there's something called witty. You tell me which one you're in the excess or deficiency of after this evening. And so, does all that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So that was relatively short.